Hi everyone, it's Paul and welcome to the video for day 3 of the 2022 Cheltenham Festival. I've got to be honest, this is the second recording of this video. I had the other one done and then, as we've seen this afternoon, the deluge came and Cheltenham turned into a bog basically. It did impact the racing. Obviously Shishkin did not go in that ground, which is not 100% it's not 100% undisbelievable and not his fault. They said it was heavy. I think if it wasn't the festival, it would have been called off. And you got to give credit for Tigerol, who hated it but went through it. So a lot of what I had picked out for Thursday, even though we're on the new course now, and not the old course, it will be not as bad. I had it based around good to soft, maybe a bit of soft, so it needed a complete rethink, basically. But 1:30 is the Turner Novices Chase, which was the Golden Miller. It's a 1 mile 4 grade 1 chase. It's currently heavy ground, though it wouldn't surprise me if it started to dry out, but this is the ultimate 2-horse race. It kind of reminds me of the times of like Seabiscuit versus War Admiral and all of these stuff, because only 4 horses go to post with 2 co-even money favourites. Making up the field is Bustleton, who has form absolutely nowhere near the level of the top 2, and the same with El Barra for Willie Mullins. That's the second string. Anything he's ever done is not in the league of the big 2. The big 2 are obviously Bob Ollinger and Galopin de Champs. Galopin de Champs is proven to be a much better chaser than he was hurdler. Last year, though, there was nothing wrong with it. He actually won the Martin Pipe by 2 1/4 lengths on good ground, doing it really, really well towards the end. Went to Punchestown and followed up in yielding ground. 2 chase wins since, both been absolutely bloodless wins at Leopardstown. Okay, you could argue one time he beat Fleur by 16 lengths back there, and Fleur came down the field yesterday in the Ultima, so how good the form is, I have no idea. He beat a horse called Ain't That a Shame, who still hasn't managed to record a win, but you can only beat what's in front of you. Then at February, he went for the Dublin Racing Festival, the Ladbroke Novice Chaser Grade 1, won by 9.5 lengths, beating stablemate Galliard Duminy, who actually placed at the festival last year. And second that day was a horse called Master McShee, and he's proven to be quite a decent novice chaser as well, winning a Grade 1 earlier in the season. So that form is pretty rock solid. But now you've got to start to look at the ground. The one time he's tackled genuine heavy ground, it was twice, and he came 6 of 13 and pulled up. That is a slight concern. I'm not saying he won't go in it because his breeding suggests he will, but if it was very heavy, it is a concern. So that leaves us with Bob Ollinger. Obviously won the Ballymore at the festival last year and is completely unbeaten since his first ever hurdle start when he came second. But is softened up for this race with a very, very easy Grade 3 win from Capodanno and Galliard Duminy. And Capodanno today came 4th in the Brown Advisory, which was, what would you call it? It was the RSA. But to be honest with you, was doing pretty well, but just tired late on. So that form is absolutely rock solid. Plus, look at Bob Ollinger's record on heavy. 1 on it at Naas, 1 on it at Gorin, 1 on it at Gorin in a National Hunt flat race. And even his second was, okay, it was over this, but he only got beaten 1 length, and that is his only defeat, and that was by Fernie Hollow, who was right towards the head of many festival markets before he got injured. It's a straight fight. It's a 2-horse race, but on this one, I'm going for Henry de Bromhead and Rachel Blackmore to come out on top, though on ratings and on form, there's nothing between them. 1, 2, 3 then for the Turner's Novices Chase, Bob Ollinger from Galopin des Champs and El Barra. Moving on to the 2:10 now, which is the horrible handicap. That is the Pertemps final handicap hurdle. It's a Grade 3 over 3 miles. And this is where I've pivoted slightly. I was going to be tipping up a big outsider on this one, and I'm still going to back it, but it's not the number 1 pick now. And I've gone back for an old friend, which is, despite top weight, Sire de Burley, a 2-time winner of this race, including under top weight. The big point for me is both of these times he won it were on soft ground. Then went for the World Hurdle last year and came second. lost nothing in defeat on good to soft ground. Hasn't really found his stride this year. Came second on comeback at Navan over a trip which was probably too short, but then was desperately disappointing behind Classical Dream and Florin Porter. But in that race as well, Commander of Fleet, who won today, was in the... and he pulled up. Soldier didn't run his race. What it was with this, though, I don't know if he just blew up because he was cruising 3 out and then 2 out, he just stopped. And he has done this before in the build-up to Cheltenham. He then was off. He was returned quite quickly to Warwick for the qualifier for this. And he came fourth and only beaten about 6.5 lengths. Again, travelling really well and just not going through. And that day, he was giving weight to the entire field, a bit like he's doing now. I think that would have brought him bang on. Gordon Elliott's finally got on the board a couple of times. And I think with that proven record of course and distance and in this race, that goes a long way. There's been a lot of money for Alaphilippe. Sorry, for Fergal O'Brien and Paddy Brennan. And I can understand that. Got some really good form in soft ground and heavy ground. But on the balance of form, for me, he hasn't quite achieved enough. And he was actually behind Sire de Burley, just behind him in that qualifier. And they're running off the same mark here. Interestingly enough, though, Paddy Brennan rides that while young Mr. R. James is riding for Gordon Elliott. Good young rider taking 7 off Sire de Burley. That's it. That's potentially an interesting move. Winter Fog for Emmett Mullen, Paul Townend taking the ride. It's got good form over 2.5 mile. Will it stay 3 in soft? Not 1,000,000% sure, but lovely weight off 10 stone 8. And a lot could be said for a lot of horses here. And I think, yeah, the ground is fine. It's just a case of whether he will actually stay. Now, the one who I think will run into the frame, because this ground is a great leveller, that's why we're seeing like the sort of old Commander of the Fleet suddenly running well, etc. Ground does make the leveller, and that is Ballyandy, who absolutely thrived in lesser races the last twice at Fakenham and Chepstow. Chepstow in particular, 3 mile on heavy, and that is a proper stay and tested Chepstow. Won by 6 lengths and had him strung out all over South Wales. Very, very impressive. He didn't run particularly well earlier this season at Cheltenham, back over 2 mile, but that trip's too short and it was on good ground. Get this horse on soft, heavy ground. He's a different animal. He even got placed in an international over 2 mile a couple of years ago. Obviously was a previous champion bumper winner. Got plenty of stamina. Okay, he's got a lot of weight, but Finn Lambert's taking 10. 20-1 now. Ballyandy is far too big. I think he'll hit the frame with many paying top 7. Now, the selection was going to be Pillion for Philip Hobbs. This horse was headed on the line in the Martin Pipe in 2020. Put a line through last season. Philip Hobbs didn't have a good year, and the horse himself was well out of form. He didn't start the season particularly well, but then started to find form with a decent 4th at Aintree and a very good win at Sandown on Tingle Creek Day in the qualifier for this. Won by 5 lengths under this jockey, keeping on strongly. Not so good latest at Cheltenham, and that was on soft ground, but did get a lot of hampering at the bottom of the hill. But if you go back through his career, he has got a heavy ground win at Fosslas, and he's got other soft ground form. So while he's probably going to need it not ultra heavy, we don't know what the weather's going to be, but at 22-1, he's well worth a bet. I'm going to be putting him in my list as well. 1, 2, 3 then for the Pertemps final. Sire de Burley from Pillion, and I'm also going to put in Ballyandy as well. On to the 250 now, which is the Ryanair Chase. It's a grade 1 over 2 mile 5, and ground or not, I'm all about Allaho. Absolutely pulverised them last year in this race. He's got tried and tested form on soft going, although to be fair, he is better on slightly better ground, but he's still got wins on yielding in his on his debut. Came second in very soft ground at Auteuil on his debut when he ran in France. And then in January last year, he won a grade 2 by 3 lengths from Ellaway and Animix, both of which went on to win graded races. And that was in heavy ground as well. He would want better ground, but he does go on it. And I think even on the ground, he's a cut above the rest. Shan Blue is interesting for Harry and Dan Skelton. He's only come out once this season when Fell But he looked like he was about to absolutely walk the Charlie Hall. Off since he fell, which is a concern, and can have a tendency to pull hard in soft going. That's not a great trait to have, and he has blown up on this course before with the big hill in view. Master Fisher is now coming into the equation with it becoming soft. Master Fisher won a really good race at Kempton in mid-January. That's a Silviniaco Conti Grade 2. Beat Eldorado Allen readily by a length and a half with 53 lengths back to the rest. So he proves he likes that soft ground. Next time out, he ran behind Fakir Doudary in the Ascot Chase, came fourth. But what it was on this, he was absolutely going as well as anything and smashed 3 out, and it just completely winded him in the ground. As long as his jumping holds together, he's overpriced at 33-1, Master Fisher. I can see him running a great race. Mellon is another one you can set your watch by, usually at Cheltenham. The concern is he does seem to need better ground. And Janadil is a horse for Willie Mullins. While he's good, he's stepping back in trip. It will have to make a very, very big improvement stepping back in trip. He hasn't been getting home over 3 mile, but even 2.5 mile on this ground is going to take a lot of getting, and that tempers enthusiasm. But Conflated is the only one we haven't mentioned. He won the Irish Gold Cup, so the softer the better coming back in trip here. And even the race before that in December at Navan, he won the Foxrock handicap by 5 lengths. Really, really good effort. Conflated, I thought he might have gone the Gold Cup, but with this rain that's come, it's probably a good move for him, stepping back for the Ryanair and allowing his stamina to come into play. He's a very good horse and a worthy opposition, but on all-known form, Allaho is looking pretty solid at this moment in time. 1, 2, 3 then for the Ryanair, Allaho from Conflated, and I'm going to put Master Fisher in there too. Moves us on to the 3:30, which is the big race of the day, the Paddy Power Stayers Hurdle, 3 mile Grade 1 on heavy. Now, I'm going to start where it was. Originally, I was tipping up Time Hill on here. Got a lot of good course form. Should have won a race here a couple of years ago as a novice. Missed last year as festival due to injury, but really battled hard to win at Aintree at the back end of last year. He had a run earlier this season in Auteuil where he came 5th when fancied. The ground blamed. That's where the lack of confidence is coming in. And then in the Ascot Long Walk was just run down late on by Champ. Probably hit the front too soon, sorry. But for me, he does get 3 mile, but I just don't know 3 mile in heavy ground if that's going to be enough. Florin Porter I didn't fancy, but now I do, because you seem to have to be near the front here. And while he got beat by Classical Dream at the Leopardstown Christmas Hurdle, what was interesting, he didn't get to front run that day. Classical Dream got the jump on him and took it over, and he ended up winning in the end. If Florin Porter gets a better start, you need to be on the front, but that's why Classical Dream is getting backed, I think, because he goes from the front. My worry with him is he didn't follow up Leopardstown, won well at Leopardstown, was 1 to 3 at Goran and came right down the field. Before that, he had no form for a couple of runs. Then he turns up again. He's a very, very hard form to predict, and he has had a lot of injury issues. But say that, look at what Willie Mullins did with Penhill the other year, brought him back after years layoff to win the World Hurdle. But I do think that Florin Porter will hold Classical Dream here. Champ is got to be interesting now that this is becoming more of a stamina test. He got beaten, which was a bit of a shock in the Cleve earlier this year in January on Trials Day, but the ground was good and it probably wasn't soft enough for him. And even last year when he got pulled up in the Gold Cup, things were just happening too fast. His best form is on soft ground, but I do have that worry with him. When you think he's going to win, he doesn't, and when you think he's beaten, he ends up cropping up. So at prohibitive odds, 4 to 1, the same as Florin Porter and Time Hill, he could easily win this. And if you look at it, 7 to 2, 4 to 1, 4 to 1, 4 to 1, the bookmakers don't even know what's going on here. But he does have that nature for throwing a bad one in. Royal Kahala for Peter Fahy is interesting. The question mark has to be about how good his Grade 2 Gulmoy Hurdle winner was. But she's a mare, she's getting weight off them, clearly stays and like soft going. But will that be enough, to go and get it won? Because when she won at the Gulmoy Hurdle, second home that day was Home by the Lee at 80 to 1. But Classical Dream was down the field, but look who came third. This is what I wanted to highlight here. Ashdale Bob. Ashdale Bob came third, and poor Ashdale Bob today in the Coral led practically the home way in the Coral over 2.5 mile and got run out of it after the last, only got beat 5.5 lengths. So you could argue Ashdale Bob has actually franked the form of Royal Kahlua. The other concern I've got with this one is that Royal Kahala here was favourite for the Muir's Novices, the Dawn Run last year, and ran like an absolute pig. Well down the field, made some headway, but just didn't see the race out. Okay, finished lame, which could be an excuse, but that would be a bit of a concern how quickly she was emptying when she hit the last. Paisley Park, what a horse it is. And do you know what? It might have been her last hurrah, getting left 9 lengths at the start in the cleave before powering through to win. My concern is here with this one. While this has got form on soft and heavy, a couple of times now, even at Ascot in December behind Champ, she tried to plant itself at the start. And then at Cheltenham again, tried to plant itself at the start. I think you have to be prominent here. If he goes and tries to do that again, I don't think he'll get away with it like he did in the cleave. So for that reason, I have got to worry about Paisley Park. And that's just, on form, he'll be bang there. But that temperament issue is a worry. Now, Lisnagar Oscar. This is going to be really interesting. Former World Hurdle winner. But it was considered a complete freak result when it won the World Hurdle in soft, heavy in places. Has never regained his form since, but has never run on soft or heavy ground since. So you could argue Lisnagar Oscar, give him the ground he wants, and it was a step in the right direction in the cleave, actually. Only got beaten by 9.5 lengths, and you could argue that the ground wouldn't have suited in the cleave. But again, I think you're going to have to be prominent, but there's a lot of people pushing for the lead here. And this is what's going to go and cause a lot of problem. I can see Classical Dream potentially going for the lead, but might strop. Time Hill, see, I want to do Time Hill, but the ground is really worrying me. Champ is now coming into it, but has that risky element. Royal Kahala, did it handle the course last time? Paisley Park, will it plant at the start? Lisnagar Oscar, is it good enough? So on the balance of form, I'm going with the reigning champion, Flooring Porter, because Flooring Porter loves the soft ground, come back to form latest, and you would have to say the ground is possibly coming right and ideal for a front runner. 1, 2, 3 for the World Hurdle, Flooring Porter from Royal Kahala, and I'm going to put Time Hill in there. Not enough to win, but to place. The 410 is the Craft Irish Whiskey Handicap Chase. It's a grade 3 over 2 mile 5. And I actually really, really fancy the Glancing Queen here for Alan King and Tom Cannon. The key to this horse is soft ground. And on the 1st of January, on Trials Day, ran in the Dipper. Okay, got beaten by 10 lengths, but was right there until the last, but just got outpointed. The winner of that day, Lahom Press, who's just gone and absolutely routed them in what was the RSA today. Before then, ran at Warwick in December, and would run really well in the listed Muir's race, winning by 7.5 lengths, put him to the sword early, jumped really well. And as I said, on Chase debut at Bangor, ran really, really well, promising, doing enough, jumping really well. Got the go in and obviously gets the Muir's allowance here. So I think it's got a great chance. Celebre Dalen has got a great chance as well. Another Muir for Philip Hobbs and Tom O'Brien. Moved to this stable from France and is 3 for 3. Big point for me. 2 wins on heavy going. On very heavy going at Haydock over hurdles. Then came back over fences at Warwick on good to soft and just got home from wishing and hoping. What I liked was it was quite a cosy win. My concern is, for all it was a cosy win on that, he did come from a way back. I'd like to see him a bit closer to the pace here, but he has got soft ground form in France, unbeaten for the yard, and she's looking very, very good. Grand Paradise for Gordon Elliott and Davy Russell also stands out at 11 to 2 odds. In the right direction recently. Looks like it's been prepared for this race, But as we've seen with a few of Elliott's recently, like Fleurer and Andy de Fresnay, you can prepare them all you want. They're just not quite getting there. And while this horse has got decent form, it hasn't got what I call winning form. And that is the worry I've got. One I do like on the ground is Admiral for Tom Lacey and Stan Shepherd. The blinkers have been the real making of this horse now. 2 for 2, and that was both over fences in blinkers. But what I liked about this was soft ground at Haydock, which takes a lot of getting through, beating Dream of Hopes, who was favourite that day by a long way, despite being quite keen. But then the next time on heavy ground, okay, it was a 3-horse egg and spoon race, you could argue. But what I liked about this was led the whole way and was just doing enough. So you could argue it hasn't beaten much, but it's got the right attitude, I think, that you need for a 2.5 mile like that. That was over 3 mile. I don't think it will suffer coming back in trip. So I think that's got a great chance. It's hard to make a case for the rest of them, even favourites like Spirit of the Games and Cool Cody. They do not like the heavy ground. Same with Pistol Whipped and all on back form. It's hard to make a case for any of the others. So I think it's a race definitely to stick towards the head of the market. 1, 2, 3 then for the plate. Glancing Queen from Celebre d'Alen and Adrimal. Can't pronounce that, still can't. The 450 now is the Mers hurdle, the Dawn Run over Grade 2, and this is my nap of the day, and that is Dino Blue for Willie Mullins and Mark Walsh in the JP McManus colours. Only ever had one run in his career, but could not have done it better in January. It went straight into my notebook for this one, travelled strongly, jumped like a stag throughout, cheekily went through the inner, powered clear, and the form is very good. La Prima Donna that day came second. Now, in February, La Prima Donna looked like she was about to win a very decent Mers hurdle, but came down on that one. The beneficiary that day was My Lighthouse, who Dino Blue also beat. So since he got beat there in third, has won at Limerick, a very decent Mers hurdle, and then stepped up in trip and came second again. So the form is absolutely rock solid. The ground, the softer the better based on what it is on France. 5 years old, all the potential in the world, and I think it's going to take a truck to stop this one. Brandy Love is Willie Mullins as well, with Paul Townend riding. Doesn't mean it's first string, it just means Mark Walsh has the choice over the McManus horses, so therefore he rides Dino Blue. But Brandy Love has looked very, very decent, if at times a little bit quirky on his bumper form. Got turned over a couple of times at odds on in bumpers, and that is not a concern. He just showed a bit of greenness, which is coming out of him now. But last time out, didn't jump well, got to the lead and started to jump badly again and got run out of it late on in a Grade 3. I would want to see her, Brandy Love, jump a lot better. Same can be applied here to Grangey, who was a very decent bumper horse for Willie Mullins. Patrick Mullins taking the ride here. She looked like she was moving really well in the Grade 3 latest, but the time before that flattered to deceive, and it's got to be a worry that the way that he again sometimes flatters to deceive. I remember I backed him one time at Sandown and had the same problem. One who looks like is destined to go well is Party Central for Gordon Elliott and Davy Russell. Won the last two on softish ground. Needed his first run of the season, but generally is looking really, really good. Bred out of Yates, and definite article on the Mers side. The soft ground's got no problem, got a really decent weight, even though it's not a handicap, but if it was a handicap, you'd be getting weight from some of these. Very good racing post-rating. I think that one's destined to run a really decent race. If you're looking for someone at a really big price and seems to do well with the runners here, have a look at Choice of Words for Martin Brazel and Dara O'Keefe. This horse has come second the last twice, both in heavy ground. Okay, you could argue it's not as good a race as this was, but look at the winners. For last time out, Journey With Me, who was, okay, booked for second when fell heavily today, but had very, very good money for it. So that form there in that second is pretty strong. The time before that at Limerick, got beaten by Daily Tiger. Daily Tiger then went on to win a graded race, and today ran in the Coral Handicap. Okay, came 12th, but was running a good race until then. The ground had definitely gone against him. But if you look at choice of words, he has form there. A win at Galway in soft, a couple of seconds in soft and heavy. In his novice days, won a Punchestown maiden bumper in heavy, second in heavy. Why this horse is 25-1, I don't know. And I think this one, she's going to hit the frame. But for me, it's all about Dino Blue, and I think this horse could be a different level to the rest. 1, 2, 3 then for the Dawn Run, Dino Blue from Party Central, and I am going to put choice of words in there too. Which brings us now to the 5:30, which is the Fultwall Win Kim Muir Challenge Amateur Riders Trophy, 3 Mile 2, Class 2, and it's going to be really interesting. Amateur riders riding back here. Obviously, last year they couldn't because of the COVID restrictions. But here we are. The current favourite is Frontal Assault for Gordon Elliott, with R. James again taking a valuable £3 off. He was a decent second last time out, 2.5 mile over at Leopardstown. Up in trip and in softer ground, though, a bit of faith has to be taken here. For saying that, though, this horse has won on heavy ground at Navan, which is a flat track. So you would have to think a bit further. He should be okay, but he does have a very big weight to carry. The one horse I think he'll hit the frame, but the one horse I do like is Schoolboy Hours for Noel Mead, with Derek O'Connor taking the ride, another JP McManus horse. This horse was brilliant last time out in a massive field in the Paddy Power chase at Leopardstown over Christmas. What I liked about him was he chased the leaders, came off the bridle and kept finding, and he led in the final strides. Okay, you could argue what's he beat, but he still did it well and looked like he had a hell of a lot more in the tank. That day, Ben Dundee came second. That came mid-division today. Third that day was Enjoy Dalen, who, to be fair, after that run a decent race at Leopardstown at the Dublin Racing Festival. And then Brayside run no sort of a race yesterday, to be fair. So you could argue the form, it might not stand up. But saying that, though, he's getting a valuable £3 off Frontal Assault, but there's nothing between them, really. Ain't That a Shame for de Bromhead and Ben Harvey's interesting. We've taken very little racing for a career for his age. He's only had 6 or 7 starts, but does have valuable form in heavy going. And that was over a trip of 3 miles, albeit over hurdles. Hasn't fully looked natural over fences, though, but if it all clicks into place, that could run well. Unfortunately, the ground, I believe, now has gone against Come On Teddy, who had tipped up last year, even though Will Biddick takes the ride. He has won on soft, but it was a very, very weak race at Uttoxeter. He won on soft. And before that, he's shown bits on soft and heavy, but generally his better form is on good ground. I think he'll run a race to a point, but I just think the ground, unfortunately, has gone against him. One who's, I think the ground hasn't gone against him, though, and I think could actually end up playing into his advantage here, is Mr. Coffee. Mr. Coffee, it's going back a couple of years ago, ran in a listed hurdler at, where was it? Sandown, and came third on that day despite getting hampered, and that was a decent piece of form. Before that, he's won on Sandown and at Newbury on soft, and when those Sandown and Newbury get soft, that really takes some getting. The problem I've got with this horse is he is error prone, for all he's got the best jockey arguably in the race in Sam Whaley-Cohen. I just think 14-1 might be a little bit overpriced. But to be honest with you, I'm still looking towards the head of the market here. And the ones, another one is Mr. Fogpatcher. Sorry, I've missed out. Very consistent. Always seems to run his race. Patrick Mullins takes the ride. But if you look through his entire form, there hasn't been one race where he hasn't smashed a fence really, really hard, which has cost his chances. That includes the Betfair handicap here, where he had a lot to do and he kept on making mistakes and it cooked him in the end. And I think that hill could cook him again. For all of Patrick Mullins might be able to get a rhythm out of him. It's a very, very tricky finale, but for the 1, 2, 3, I'm going for Schoolboy Hours from Frontal Assault, and I am going to put Mr. Coffee in too. Good luck, everyone. Enjoy day 3, and I'll see you tomorrow for the final day. Cheers.